Hi, and welcome to Learning to Be Human. I'm Benji, and I'm learning along with you. Today's book is The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. He's a phenomenal author, a bit long winded possibly, but has a lot of really interesting points and a lot of interesting insights that I believe are important to share with you. The first time I ever heard about this book was I believe I was 16, maybe I was 17, and I was in an English class. My teacher loved the author. She thought he was just phenomenal. I, Me and my fellow students may not have agreed, but we read this chapter out of a book of how to be, or what was it, Seven Habits of Highly Effective Teens. Of course, we were teens at the time, so it made a little bit of sense. We didn't get it. We didn't understand any of what he was saying. And I don't have any recollection of that assignment other than the fact that we made fun of my teacher incessantly. We thought she was so dumb for giving us this assignment on how to be a human, on how to practically exist. Little did we know, we were hardly acting like humans. We didn't really understand what it was that she was trying to teach us, and therefore we threw it away as if it was worthless. It wasn't until, maybe 6 years after, and I had graduated college and I was trying to figure out what it was to do with my life, that I found this book again. I wondered what secrets could this book offer, and why was everyone I ever met recommending it to me? I tried it and I picked it up and I thought, even after the first chapter, this book is dense. This book is dense and it's awful and I hate it and it's the worst thing I've ever read, and I put it down. I didn't touch it for an entire year, right? And then my buddy read it and I was like, well, I mean, I'm as smart as he is. Like, if he's reading it, if he thinks it's effective, I suppose I should give it another shot. So I wound up giving the book another shot, and I must say, it is phenomenal. I don't think the book is for people before they've reached adulthood, before they've reached the point in their life where they have autonomy to choose what they do. They have the ability to learn competency and the ability to build community. Because without those three factors, it's incredibly difficult to implement anything from this book into your life. That being said, having those structures, having those cornerstone places to, settle your foundation, your bedrock, it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of effort. And this book kind of walks you through what is it that is required of me in order to be an effective human, and in my opinion, just a good human, a human that cares, a human that feels, that evolves, and that's willing to grow, a human that's willing to change and willing to develop in a way that will be better than it was yesterday. So, in this particular episode today, I'm going to talk about just a general overview of the book, and in subsequent episodes, we'll be able to go into the different chapters that Mr. Covey seems to highlight. I know it has seven habits. Some of them I think are more effective than others, at least for me personally. I'll go through them all, but I will be honest, I do have a particular bias towards a couple of these. They're very pertinent to my personal life. So, the seven habits, I like this circle. He has this circle on here. You can screenshot it, or if you're just listening, I'm putting it up to the camera, so sorry. The circle has two triangles in it, each touching each other. It's actually honestly kind of hard to describe, but basically, the idea of this book is to move you from a state of dependence to a state of independence to a state of interdependence. And those three steps, as I'll explain in more detail throughout our analysis of these chapters, but in a brief overview, those 3 steps are: stop relying on other people, be able to rely on yourself, and then be able to rely on other people again. I think it's very interesting. I heard this quote a very long time ago. I believe it was on the wall of a bagel place that I used to go to growing up. And it said that the skill of our generation won't be to learn. It will be to learn, to unlearn, and then to relearn that same information. Because every day the information that we need to use will vary. And we have to understand how to drop certain lessons, how to forget certain understandings that were core to our belief and our ability to succeed. And this is a classic use case of that situation, where you have to first learn how to be free, then learn how to be with others. But in order to learn how to be free, you must disconnect. You must disconnect who you are from who they are before you reconnect to become who we are. And it's just one of those things where I love the way this book goes through. It's not just about building yourself into something. It's about building our world into something. It's about this idea that each of us individually trying our best will lead to our best society. I don't think it's talked about enough, where the virtue of doing something correctly is that now you know how to do it correctly. And when you ever run into someone, whether they ask you for help or not, you have the ability to say how to do it correctly and how to explain it and how to move on. So now they can also do it correctly. The blessing of competence is to share it with the world. So these habits, the first habit is to be proactive. Gosh, being proactive is so tough. It's so tough because it requires you to know the future and to understand that things that come up in your life are sometimes your fault and sometimes not your fault, but they're always your responsibility. Tackling issues before they become problems is a very mature and adult attitude that a lot of people take decades to learn. Being proactive doesn't mean constantly wearing a helmet or never driving in the fast lane on the highway. Being proactive means knowing how much gas is in the tank. Being proactive means bringing an umbrella because it will rain this afternoon. Being proactive means knowing that life may throw a curveball at you and utilizing your resources in order to be prepared for it. Some things we can't be proactive against, like a meteor hitting the earth, you'll never be proactive against. But I think being proactive is a fundamental skill of being an adult. And we'll go into more detail of what it means to be proactive and how we can implement that into our own lives in a more meaningful and usable way. The next step towards becoming independent is to begin with the end in mind. And I think that has a lot to do with being proactive. It's understanding before you get into something what the ramifications and what the consequences of your actions could possibly be. Knowing what it is that you're getting into isn't always possible, but it's, at least in our modern world, it's very easy to look up a video of what something might be like, whether it's a day in the life of a McDonald's line cook or a day in the life of a CEO. We have this blessing of being able to see things before we get into them, and understanding that sometimes we don't start with the beginning, we start with the end, and then figure out how to begin. Putting first things first is the last of the 3, going from dependence to independence. Putting first things first it's just another extension of being proactive. he has a very particular way of describing it, and I think it's very easy to understand, and I think it's very useful to look at the world the way he does. There are four different types of actions, and you have to understand that when things come towards you, they're either of these four types of actions. They're either urgent and important, urgent and unimportant, unimportant and unurgent, or unurgent and important. Now, I did say that wrong, and I will flesh it out better in the more set video. But understand that the most important things in your life are the things that are not urgent, but are important. Now, we move on to how do you work well with others? How do we play nice with others? How do we fit in with our society? So habit number 4 is to think win-win. In my opinion, thinking win-win is the hardest of the 7 habits. Thinking win-win requires you to have confidence in your own ability and trust in someone else's. Confidence and trust are two things that I don't really know how to artificially cultivate. But I do understand the point of when you're in an argument with someone, even if you get your way, even if you get what you want, it's very possible that you still won't feel good. In the same way as if you didn't get what you want. Why? Because in order to get what you want, you made someone else lose. And now they're angry, they're mad, they want to take it out on you. And in the long run, that win will just be a series of little losses between you and your relationship with this other person. Winning isn't the most important thing. The most important thing is that both parties come out of a situation believing that they've been understood and have gotten an outcome that benefits the both of them. Thinking win-win is not about compromise. It's about strategy. It's about how to create a great solution when there never seemed to even be a good one. It requires creativity, it requires effort, and it requires patience. The 5th habit is to first understand, then be understood. In my book, I have these little author's notes in the back of each chapter where I believe it's the son of Mr. Covey Jr. He decides to write his own little interpretation of what each habit means and why it is that that's important. When I was reading it, it struck me as a very interesting thing because he said that habit 5 was Stephen Covey's most difficult habit to follow. First understand, then seek to be understood. It's an interesting point of view because it's a two-pronged attack. When listening to someone, you have to first be able to comprehend what they're saying, whether this means asking questions, following along, Googling words you don't know. And before you even think to try to say your own point, I think that's the most important thing, is that you seek, you hear them before you say what you want, which is it's hard. It's very important, and it's very hard to do. Because I personally just want to blurt out my own opinion. He even said, why would I listen to you when I know I'm right? Why would I listen to someone's wrong opinion when I know I'm right? It's a very closed off mindset. But even Mr. Covey, the guy who wrote the book, he's the one who said that. These are hard. These are hard to follow. And even the author believed that it's hard to follow. Habit 6. It's just called synergize. It's kind of vague. A lot of it has to do with understanding strengths and weaknesses. So I think about win-win, and I think about seeking to understand before you are understood. And I think what you do is You take each other's strengths and weaknesses and you find a way to make it so that the final whole is greater than the initial parts. Now, this is one that I definitely have no idea how to do. It's a very, very strange concept to me, which is understanding that someone's faults in some of your own faults aren't negative, they're just true. And having the vulnerability to share that so that everyone else can figure out a way for you to coexist and live in harmony or synergy. The final bit is sharpening the saw, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Reread the book. See if there are things that you learned. See if there are things that you didn't learn. Trying to figure out why it was that you missed certain things and picked up on certain things. And trying to figure out what it is that you're trying to do with this book in the future. This is about your life. This book is about your life. It's not about today. It's not about tomorrow. It's about a decade from now. It's about being a better member of our world. And that's a really important thing. So in the next few episodes, we'll go over in more detail how it is that all of these different chapters make a damn lick of sense. And why is it that they matter? So I'm here to help you out. For all you guys that don't like reading, that will never pick up a book, well, I'm going to make sure you get at least some of these ideas throughout your day. I hope you have a good one. Goodbye.